At the end of this puzzle, I believe you're going to smile or at least appreciate the beauty of what has happened. If you don't feel that way, then maybe it's a sign that you don't love chess as much as some other people, or it might not mean anything. But regardless, this is a fascinating puzzle and I'm excited to share it with you. Before I say too much, if you'd like to pause and figure out how do you think white can draw this game, black's pawn is going down the board in this direction. Before I say anything else, go ahead and pause if you would like. All right, if you had a chance to do that, let's go ahead and talk about the situation here for white. It is not looking good because this pawn is on a path to becoming a queen, and it looks like white is going to have a very difficult time stopping it. For example, if you try to simply just go for it right away, the knight's defending, so it's just going to keep moving. And you can't go down here because the knight, you can try to come over this way, but again, the pawn pushes, and you can't get through. Right? Next move, black gets a queen. You can't stop it. If we go back, you can try to capture the knight, thinking that maybe you can come in this way. But the problem with that approach is that as soon as your king lands on g2, black's going to play king to e2 and get a queen next move, right? So what we can see from this is that our king is not able to stop the pawn. So white somehow has to figure out a way to use the knight to stop the pawn. And there's one move with a particular idea that can do that. So if you'd like to pause, what do you think the move is for the white knight? There's obviously 4 options, and only one of them is the correct move. What do you think it is? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is knight to c6. And the point is, of course, black's going to be trying to push the pawn as quick as they can. You have to be able to stop it before it becomes a queen with your knight. And so after f3, knight to e5, attacking the pawn. And by the way, I should mention here, if white is able to sacrifice the knight for the pawn, it's going to be a draw. So for example, if black plays a random move like king e2 and white's able to do this, even though black has 2 knights, this is a drawn endgame. You cannot win by force. The only way you could win is if white sort of helps you by voluntarily running to the corner and, doing some things that they wouldn't have to do. Otherwise, it's going to be a draw. Okay, so as far as we're concerned, this is considered a draw. So when white plays the move knight to g4, there's a very serious threat of, I'm going to take the pawn. And if black pushes again, here is white's kind of final idea. Knight to g4, attacking it again. And now when black gets the queen, the knight is in the perfect position to deliver a fork. And the king moves, white takes the knight, and we get the same, drawn endgame, right? So that's white's idea. However, black has a lot of tricks up their sleeve. So after the move knight to c6, black plays f3, knight to e5, and now black plays a very clever move, knight to g3 check. And the point is a couple of things. First of all, if white just says, you know what, I'm going to take the knight, why not? Brings my king closer and I get rid of one of the knights. Well, now black is going to push. You remember what white's plan was, right? Knight here. Black has the very clever knight to f5 check, and it's controlling this square. This is the key. So now when the king moves, black gets the queen. And remember, there was a fork here. Doesn't work anymore. Well, it's also in check. But even if the king would have, let's say, went over here, you still get the queen. And this fork no longer works because the knight can just take, right? So that's black's idea. Also, going back here, if the king goes to g4 and doesn't take the knight, well, black's going to do the same thing, push the pawn, and the knight can't actually go to g4 anymore. The king is in the way. So you see how by black playing this knight g3 check, they're causing white some big problems. So because of that, the king actually can't take the knight. You can't go to g4, which means you have to go to g5. So king to g5 is the move. So now black pushes the pawn, f2. White plays knight to g4, going for the same idea, right? Trying to take the pawn. And of course, if black gets the queen, there's still this fork available. So nothing has changed there. But now black plays the move knight to f3 check. And again, white has to make a decision about where do you move the king to. Now, you don't really want to run away. So f4 is the only move available that brings you closer, right? You can't go here, and you can't go here, and you can't go here. So if you want to get closer, you have to go to f4. But now black plays another tricky knight move, knight to h5 check. And again, white is presented with the problem of, okay, where do I move my king? Now, the obvious capturing the knight does not work because now black gets the queen with check, and white is no longer doesn't have time to do the fork, right? You have to deal with the check. So that doesn't work for white. You might say, what if they go to e3, trying to chase it down this way? Well, now we get the queen, and that's where the knight needed to go to fork the pieces. It can no longer go there. Okay, great. So that's also a problem for white. So what white has to do, oh, and I should also mention on king to e4, there's this really, really nice move by black, knight to f6 check, which forks these pieces. And the point is that white can't take you, or now you get the queen, and they no longer have the fork, right? That they needed the knight to be able to fork, and he can't. And if you just move your king somewhere, well, then they can just take the knight, right? Even if you take this knight, I should mention, they just take it. Defends the pawn, they get a queen next move with the help of the king, right? So that means, going back to this position, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. You can't go here. You can't go here. You can't go here. Only legal move for white is king to f5 that's remaining. All right, so king to f5. And now it looks like white has succeeded, right? Like, okay, you've got the pawn attacked. If black gets the queen, you're going to come here with the fork. Everything looks good. It looks like black's out of tricks until this move. f1, not a bishop, not a rook, not a queen, knight. Black gets 3 knights to prevent the fork. Now, if you go there, black's going to simply take you. And if you're wondering, 3 knights and a king against a knight is a win for the 3 knights. So it looks like white is in trouble, except for one final trick, which is where the real beauty of this puzzle comes in. So if you would like to pause, here's a great time to pause. What do you think white can play in this position? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is knight to e3 check anyway. And I know what you're thinking, Nelson, you just said the knight's going to take it. And the knight is going to take it. Check. And now black has 3 knights and a king, and white has nothing. What is white doing? Wait for it. King to e4, forking the knights. Yes, even kings can fork pieces. And white is saying, whichever knight you move, I'm going to take the other one. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, that's great, but there's king to e2, and black defends, and white's in trouble, right? What do you notice about this position? If you said it's a stalemate, you would be correct. The white king is not in check, which means it's not checkmate, but he can't move. You can't go here because this knight. 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 And you can't go to any of these 3 because of the king. This, my friends, is a fascinating stalemate, and this is the trick that white has to draw the game. If that doesn't make you smile or appreciate the beauty of chess, I don't know what will. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you over here in this one. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.